In August of 2021, I visited Seaside Heights, New Jersey with a few co-workers during a long weekend getaway. We all needed a break after a brutal quarter, and the idea was simple. Eat junk food, ride the Ferris wheel, drink too much, and go home sunburned and happy. The boardwalk was alive with neon lights, the smell of fried dough, and the chaotic buzz of arcade games. It felt nostalgic and safe, like childhood bottled up and replayed at full volume, but that feeling didn't last. It started on our second night. We'd split up after dinner, and I wandered off alone to grab a funnel cake while the others waited in line for some haunted house ride. The vendors had started shutting down for the night, and the crowd had thinned out enough that the boardwalk felt wide and strangely empty. I passed the usual stuff, claw machines, shooting galleries, spinning wheels, but then I noticed a small arcade booth I hadn't seen before. It didn't match the rest. No flashing signs, no speakers blaring theme music. It was tucked between a t-shirt shack and a closed-down lemonade stand. The booth looked faded, almost sun-bleached, with a single word hand-painted across the top, "Winner." That was it. No brand, no color scheme. Just one dusty screen, a red plastic stool, and a glowing play button that pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. I hesitated, but figured it was some retro thing designed to look old. I sat down and pressed the button. The screen lit up in grayscale. No logos, no animation, just a grainy first-person perspective of a boardwalk, oddly similar to the one I was sitting on. The game looked like a walking simulator. The view moved forward slowly with a soft, static hum. After a few seconds, a figure appeared on the screen. It stood far off at the end of the virtual boardwalk, back turned, motionless. I thought the point was to approach them, so I tapped the button again. The figure got closer. Still no sound, no score, no instructions. I tapped again, closer. But this time I noticed something that made my hands go cold. The game character, the boardwalk, even the food stands. It wasn't just similar to where I was sitting. It was identical. Down to the broken neon letter on the funnel cake stall and the way the lights flickered above, it was showing this boardwalk in real time. I turned around, half expecting someone with a drone camera or some prank setup, but the booth was quiet and no one was watching. Back on the screen, the figure had turned around. I hadn't pressed anything, but the character in the game, the one at the far end, was now facing the screen. It was blurry, but the shape was unmistakably human. And then, impossibly, it started walking toward the screen on its own. Tap. I didn't press the button this time, but the screen pulsed again. Closer, and now I could make out details. The figure wasn't just facing the screen, it looked like it was wearing the exact same outfit I was. Same hoodie, same shoes. Tap. Closer still. Now I saw the face. Mine. The figure was me. I jumped back from the stool, but the screen didn't pause. My digital double kept moving forward, slow and steady, like it knew where I was sitting. I bolted. I didn't look back, didn't stop running until I reached my friends near the haunted house. I tried to explain it, but they thought I was joking or drunk. They offered to walk me back, but when we returned to where I'd found the booth, it wasn't there. In its place was just the empty alley between the t-shirt shack and the lemonade stand. No screen, no stool, no sign. The vendor at the t-shirt shop swore nothing had been set up there all night. Back at the hotel, I couldn't sleep. I kept the lights on. My hoodie was still damp with sweat, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I checked my phone's camera roll, hoping maybe I'd snapped a picture. Nothing. But the next morning, there was a new photo I didn't take, just one. It was a grainy black and white image, same filter as the game. And it showed me sitting at that arcade booth, frozen mid-frame, mouth slightly open, looking directly at the screen. The background, empty boardwalk, except for a figure standing far off in the distance, walking toward me. In June of 2022, I visited Santa Cruz, California for a solo weekend reset. I'd grown up on stories about the boardwalk there, but had never actually been. It was supposed to be light-hearted, a break from my heavy routine working in palliative care, the noise, the laughter, the flashing lights. I needed it. The Santa Cruz Beach boardwalk was everything I'd expected, charming, nostalgic, and full of people with sand on their shoes and sunburns on their cheeks. But I didn't expect to get caught up in something that felt like it wasn't from this world. The second day, after sunset, I started walking alone down the far end of the boardwalk, past the games and food vendors. Most people stayed in the crowded center, so it thinned out quickly. I passed a vintage ride, something that looked like a spinning tunnel attraction, the kind that knocks your sense of direction around. It was gated off. The lights above it were off, and there was a sign that read "Closed for renovation." I wouldn't have thought anything of it if I hadn't seen the girl standing inside. She was behind the rusted bars, maybe 13 or 14, dressed in clothes that looked oddly out of place, too formal, too old. She had this intense look on her face, like she wasn't confused or lost, but waiting. Her eyes locked on mine, unblinking. I looked around for a parent, an attendant, anyone. But we were alone. When I looked back, she was gone. I thought maybe she ducked behind the ride's old platform. Against my better judgment, I slipped through a small gap in the fence and stepped into the ride's shadow. The air changed immediately, warmer somehow, heavy, like breathing in someone else's exhale. The tunnel of the ride stood still, unpowered, lined with peeling paint and torn fabric. I walked slowly, calling out softly in case she'd gotten hurt or was hiding. Then I heard something, not a child's voice, a rhythm, a soft thud, 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 echoing from inside the tunnel. I should have turned back. But something pulled me in. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was instinct, or maybe I was already too far in to pretend it wasn't happening. The inside of the tunnel was pitch black, but as I stepped in, low orange lights blinked on along the floor, one by one, like they were welcoming me. I walked forward slowly until I reached the center. That's when the tunnel began to spin. I braced myself, thinking I'd somehow triggered an automatic mechanism. But the floor beneath me wasn't moving. Just the walls, and there was no sound, no engine, no motor hum. Just the spinning and the faint echo of that same thud, 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 like a heartbeat in the walls. Then the lights cut out completely. I stood frozen in pitch black for what felt like a minute, maybe longer. I don't know how long I was in there, but when the lights returned, I wasn't in the tunnel anymore. I was in a hallway. Not just any hallway, but the walls were made of the same torn fabric from the ride, and everything had this dreamlike haze to it. I turned around, expecting the spinning tunnel, but it was gone. In its place was just an impossibly long corridor with flickering bulbs stretching ahead. No doors, no exits. I walked forward, slowly. The only sound was my breathing and that rhythmic thud, 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 growing louder. Eventually I saw movement, that girl, the same one from earlier. She was standing at the end of the hallway, still. Too still. I called out. No answer. I walked closer. She didn't move. And then, suddenly, the hallway behind me slammed shut with a metallic clang that reverberated through the space like a freight train had hit it. The girl disappeared again, but the space where she stood now had a mirror, floor to ceiling. I stepped in front of it, confused. The reflection wasn't me, it was almost me, but not. It moved just a little off sync. Its expression was empty, lifeless, and then it tilted its head slowly, but I hadn't moved. My body stayed still, but the reflection smiled. I turned to run, but the hallway behind me wasn't there anymore. It was a dead end, 4 walls, no exit. The lights went out again. And this time, when they came back on, I was standing outside the ride. In daylight. It was morning. A man walking a dog passed by, gave me a weird look. I looked around in disbelief. The ride was there, still rusted and dark, with the closed for renovation sign still hanging. The sun was up. My phone said it was 7:12 a.m. I'd been missing for almost 12 hours. When I went back to the hotel, the clerk at the front desk said they'd tried to call me. My key card hadn't registered after 8 the previous night. I checked my phone's camera roll. One new photo, just one. It was a grainy picture of that mirror inside the ride, but this time the reflection wasn't me at all. It was the girl, standing alone, and behind her, barely visible in the darkened glass, was a second figure, identical to me, wearing my clothes, but with no face. Chapter 3, Story 3, The Vendor That Wasn't There. In late September of 2020, I took a solo trip to Ocean City, Maryland, just to get away from everything for a while. My job had gone remote. I had just ended a relationship, and I figured a few quiet nights near the water would clear my head. The boardwalk was mostly empty, the summer crowds long gone, and that quiet made everything feel a little more surreal. By the third night, I was used to the sound of the waves rolling in behind the buildings and the occasional creak of the wooden planks beneath my shoes. I liked that it felt like the place belonged to me. That changed when I saw the vendor cart. It was parked just beyond the row of lampposts, where the boardwalk started to dip into shadow near the old pier. The cart looked like one of those old-fashioned popcorn or cotton candy stands. Except it didn't quite belong. Too clean, too pristine. It didn't have the logos or bright graphics the other vendors had, just a deep crimson canopy and a single word printed on the side in faded script. Treats? I assumed it was one of those retro-style carts someone had wheeled out for aesthetic, maybe for a photo shoot or Halloween event. There was a man standing behind it. He wore a pressed white shirt, black bow tie, and a stiff red apron. His posture was completely straight, too straight, like he hadn't moved in hours. I approached slowly, mostly out of curiosity. When I got close enough to make out his face, something felt off. His features were symmetrical, smooth, and almost mannequin-like, but his eyes, they weren't glassy, they were very human and locked on me. He didn't speak, just gestured toward a tray of wrapped candies sitting on the cart. Small, red and black, unmarked wrappers, no price signs, no brand, just a neat pile of what looked like hard candy. I felt uneasy, but I reached into my pocket and offered $1 out of politeness. He didn't take it, he just tilted his head like he was trying to understand what I was doing. I shrugged, took one candy, and walked off. The candy was weird, it tasted like burnt sugar and iron. I spit it out after a few seconds and tossed the wrapper into the nearest trash bin. That night, back at the small motel I was staying in, I kept waking up. Every hour or so I would jolt up, convinced someone had whispered my name right next to the bed. But each time the room was empty. I blamed it on the salt air or maybe just being in a new place, but the last time I woke up, around 3:17 a.m., I found something sitting on the table near the window. A red and black candy, unwrapped, placed neatly on a napkin. I hadn't brought it back. I left the motel by sunrise and headed back to the boardwalk. I walked directly to where I'd seen the cart, expecting to find it again. But it wasn't there. Nothing was. No tire marks, no vendor, just empty space. I stopped at the nearest open cafe and asked the barista if she knew anything about a vintage candy vendor that's sometimes set up near the pier. She gave me a strange look and said no one had used that stretch of the boardwalk in years. It was being repaired. I left feeling like maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I'd had a strange dream, and that candy on the napkin was something I'd absent-mindedly pocketed, but over the next 2 days, I kept finding them. In my jacket pocket, in the bathroom sink. Once on the hood of my car, always unwrapped, always sitting neatly on a napkin or tissue like it had been served. I tried throwing them away. I tried flushing one down the toilet. They came back. On my final night before heading home, I returned to the boardwalk one last time. I had to prove to myself it was real, that I wasn't losing it, and there it was. The vendor cart, same spot, same man. But this time there were no candies on the tray, just one, a single red and black piece unwrapped. He stared at me again, eyes locked, and then finally he moved, just one motion. He pointed down at the candy. I backed away, but my legs felt heavy, like my muscles weren't listening. My eyes kept drifting toward the cart no matter how much I tried to pull away. That candy, it felt less like something I was being offered and more like something I owed. When I finally forced myself to leave, it felt like walking uphill through sand. Every step away from that vendor felt unnatural, like gravity didn't want me to leave. I drove home that night without stopping. I've never gone back to Ocean City, but that's not the end of it. I still get the candies, once a month, mailed to me, no return address, always in a white envelope, always unwrapped. The last one came with something new, a small slip of paper, folded underneath, one word typed in the same faded script I saw on the cart, soon. If these stories made you glance over your shoulder, even once, then mission accomplished. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because the next true horror story might already be watching you.